Hello. Today's episode number 28 of the Professor Slots podcast discusses the value of keeping good gambling records for tax preparation purposes and more, plus slot machine casino gambling in the great U.S. state of Mississippi. Thank you for joining me for the Professor Slots podcast show. I'm John Friedel, and this is a podcast about slot machine casino gambling. It is where I provide the knowledge, insights, and tools for helping you improve your slot machine gambling performance. Show notes are available within most podcast apps or at professorslots.com/E28.
John Friedel from the Professor Slots blog reveals all his tips and tricks for thriving in the casino environment. Choose winning slot machines and identify your gambling goals. Being entertained, earning comps, winning take-home cash, or combining them. John has won 90 taxable jackpots and a luxury car in 9 months of slot play and made a profit at slots gambling since 2013.
In case you missed it, on last week's episode, I went over a trip report to Seminole Brighton Casino a few hours south of Orlando, where I learned and taught how to win at their slot machines. Visit Seminole Brighton Casino to try it yourself. Also last week, I reviewed Minnesota slot machine gambling, including that Minnesota slot machine casino gambling consists of video slot machines at tribal casinos, having negotiated 22 state tribal compacts. Slot machine payout returns are legally required to be between 80% and 95%. Tribal casinos are not required to provide actual payout values. 2 parimutuel facilities offer card games only. I hope you enjoyed listening to my last episode as much as I enjoyed making it for you. Remember to visit professorslots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. Let's get started with the first segment of the show, gambling record keeping for tax preparation and more. Keeping gambling records for tax preparation as well as tracking gambling performance is essential to good money management of gambling bankrolls. Knowing how much you've won at gambling is a requirement of the U.S. Internal Revenue Service. But further, knowing how much you've lost is to your advantage. The multiple advantages include any potential gambling deductions for income taxes, plus being a record-keeping tool for tracking and understanding your gambling performance. This episode will show an increasing sophistication to record-keeping, from the minimum information necessary for tax purposes to the most that can be relatively easily recorded. These so-called data spreadsheets avoid being an excessive burden to the player while still providing value for income tax and gambling performance analysis purposes. Sample table layouts will be provided for insertion into most any spreadsheet software. Keep in mind that software is not actually necessary to keep good gambling records. A single notebook or stack of papers is all that's needed for income tax purposes. If you happen to already know how to use data spreadsheet software, however, that's all for the better in terms of performing most any financial analysis of gambling wins and losses. In an attempt to help, I explain and provide spreadsheet examples having columns that identify what gambling information needs to be tracked, either at a minimum for tax purposes or in more detail for statistical analysis by interested players. These spreadsheet examples can be used by all gamblers, but have been designed to be most helpful for slot machine casino gamblers. One final point I'd like to make about keeping gambling records for tax preparation and more is this. I sincerely believe that your gambling performance at playing slots will financially improve when using some or all of my techniques. But this is a real-world consequence, increased income taxes. I feel I can't just explain to you how to win at playing slots. I also need to explain how to handle winning at slots. Paying income taxes is the inherent responsibility of all citizens of a country. Besides paying my own income taxes, I also feel I have a responsibility to point out potential financial pitfalls, as well as any available potential savings. And there are definitely a bit of both. This episode has the following sections. An introduction. Question: how's your gambling going? Gambling records for income tax preparation purposes. Gambling records for understanding financial performance. All complimentary gifts are taxable. Warning: a surprising city local income tax burden, and A summary. Before moving forward, I also need to acknowledge that I am not a professional tax preparation expert. If applying any of these suggestions I'm about to tell you, please be sure to consult your income tax professional. When talking with low and high roller casino gamblers at the casino events I've been invited to attend, I've often taken the opportunity to ask how their gambling is going. Naturally, I ask this question from a financial point of view. When I ask, I'm not blunt about doing so. Instead, I try to politely work it into an ongoing conversation. Almost always, I get one of two responses to, "So, how's your gambling going?" One, they say, somewhat unconvincingly, "I'm breaking even." Or two, they give the impression of knowing exactly how well they are doing, but just as clearly are never going to tell me. Sufficiently good money management skills is a difference between these two groups, those who have some level of uncontrolled spending and those who have the necessary information to make intelligent choices in their approaches to gambling. It is my belief that players providing the first response don't know if they are actually breaking even or not. Why not? Well, in general, there are two possible reasons. First, they don't care to know anything more than keeping track of any W-2G tax documents they or their tax professional will need later for annual income tax returns. Second, they don't know how to keep track of anything more. For example, perhaps they'd never before won a taxable jackpot of $1,200 or more. This might even be due to never having gambled before that year. Or suddenly they've learned how to win more than ever before. Whichever the case may be, discovering far too late the essential nature of keeping gambling records for tax preparation will eventually prove to be quite frustrating. While not much can be done for last year's casino visits, perhaps, let's try to avoid it happening again for next year's tax preparation, shall we? For tax purposes and to understand gambling performance, keeping track of spending in a consistent yet convenient manner should be done in ways that make sense to a slots player, given how individual circumstances can be very different. For minimum tax purposes, at least 5 entries are required. These include 1. The date. This is the day on which the gambling session occurred. 2. The location. This is the unique name of the gaming property where the gambling occurred. 3. Bankroll. This is the amount spent gambling. 4. Take home. This is the amount remaining after gambling. And 5. Comps and comp dollars. This is the complimentary gift or gifts earned during this session along with their fair market value. Players who receive comps need to keep in mind the fair market value of every one of these complimentary gifts needs to be included as taxable income. This can be done either immediately or after if you need to research its value. I'll have more on this in a following subsection. Once again, consult with a tax professional to be certain of the entries each individual player in a household needs to record for tax purposes. The following lists of table entries are only suggestions from someone who is definitely not a tax professional. Beyond the bare necessities for managing taxes, there is other additional useful information a slots player might record to help themselves or their tax professional accurately complete their annual tax returns, such as recording any taxable jackpots won. Doing so results in a sort of checklist for the total number of W-2G tax documents which might be received over the course of a calendar year. For high-limit slots players, the so-called high rollers, this can be a substantial and extensive list. Along with the bare necessities mentioned, we now add another 5 entries. 1. Gross jackpot. This is the amount won prior to taxes paid. 2. Net jackpot. This is the amount given to the player after income taxes are automatically paid. 3. Federal taxes. This is the amount of the federal income taxes automatically paid, if any. 4. State taxes. This is the amount of the state income taxes automatically paid, if any. 5. Local or city taxes. This is the amount of local income taxes automatically paid, if any. There are several comments to be made about the practical use of the above list. First, not every visit to a casino will result in one taxable jackpot. Jackpots won may well be less, or more specifically 0, as well as potentially more than one taxable jackpot. I've gotten as many as 7 taxable jackpots in a single day, as well as more than 1 taxable jackpot during a single slot's playing session upon multiple occasions. If no taxable jackpot is won, then simply leave that entry blank. However, when winning more than 1 taxable jackpot, I use a merge command in my spreadsheet software so that I have separate entries for each taxable jackpot, but only 1 entry per casino visit for date, location, bankroll, take-home, and comps. Also, I will often combine state and local income taxes into a single entry because that's what the casinos I happen to visit typically provide. While each taxable jackpot can instead be separate entries in your gambling records, there may be a bit of a delay for completing all of these entries. Be aware some casinos issue jackpot receipts immediately, but the W2G can be sent via snail mail to the winner's home address of record, and only the W2G may note the relative tax rates for state and local. Finally, note that the income tax rates being applied may very well not be your tax rates. If you are gambling in another state, for example, you may have to complete a state income tax form for those taxable jackpots in addition to your own home state. The same can be said for city and local taxes. Any city or local income tax rate is for the city or locale the casino is located in, which is not necessarily your own. Beyond these bare necessities and convenient entries for tax preparation purposes is the need of some slots players to have additional entries to allow for their gambling performance financial analyses. These additions will eventually be dependent on how each player prefers their financial analysis be performed, so modifications will likely be needed. I've tried to make these modifications, be easy to accommodate. However, to help a player get started using these analyses, there are 3 additional entries that will be necessary. These additions include 1. Timestamp, the relatively precise time at which the jackpot was won. 2. Slot machine, a unique identifier of the winning slot machine. And 3. Comments. This long entry is for careful noting of any winning patterns suspected or seen. The final entry I'd highly recommend for every gambling event, such as visiting a casino, is to keep notes. These notes for each visit have served me very, very well as a catch-all for occurrences that didn't quite fit into an entry into my records. Then, later, they helped identify a winning pattern I would eventually experiment with and, as it happens, write a book about, as well as explain to you in articles and podcast episodes. For instance, sometimes I'm playing a slot machine that's very, very good at cycling bankrolls. My record doesn't have a good way to record a time range within my visit where a slot machine is performing in this manner, because it is otherwise set up to list jackpot times. Hence, making a note about this behavior is something I can return to at a later time. In general, I've found notes from each visit as a truly great way to record the details of the performance of a slot machine in terms of non-taxable jackpots. I'm still working on the best way to capture these small bits of information. Anything I develop would have a primary purpose which supports taking advantage of this type of winning opportunity. So far, for example, I've rejected developing a smart device app due to legal restrictions on using electronic gaming tools at casinos. On one final note for this section, don't forget to record the time of a jackpot win correctly. With many jackpots, it can become difficult to know whether the entry was 11:30 a.m. or 11:30 p.m. if only numbers are used. If a player is comfortable doing so, they should consider using the 24-hour military format for keeping track of the precise time of a jackpot win. For that previous example, those 2 different times of 11:30 a.m. and 11:30 p.m. become highly distinguishable as 11:30 and 23:30. Finally, I found it convenient to use entirely separate spreadsheet tables for keeping a record of complimentary gifts. While the cell merge software function would again be possible, sometimes the long description of a comp deserves its own format. For example, imagine the many comps that might be included in an annual cruise or trip to Las Vegas. Logistically, I found it easier to simply start a second table for this complication of many complimentary gifts. Such a table or spreadsheet would have the following entries only: 1. Date, the date on which the gambling session occurred. 2. Location, a unique name of the gaming property where the gambling occurred. 3. Comp, a description of the complimentary gift earned and received. And 4. Comp dollars, the fair market value of the complimentary gift received. My best advice isn't about how to change a particular style of gambling from one highly individualized approach to another requiring a higher bankroll. My best advice is about the perhaps unexpected pitfalls of making significant changes to your gambling style. For example, are you ready to go up to the next income tax bracket? Or going up to the next tax bracket after that? What is the highest income tax bracket anyway? How do you go about determining the fair market value for an influx in comps received from a casino so as to not get in trouble with the IRS when submitting those comps as taxable income? Players may be surprised to know that understanding city taxes is especially important to continued financial health when switching gambling styles, especially when switching over to a gambling style that significantly increases the amount of taxable jackpots won. I know I was shocked when I found out. Here's 2 questions you need to know the answers to, no matter the gambling style being used. Note that later episodes will describe many different individual gaming styles and why they matter to winning at slots. First, and most importantly, a player needs to know if they pay local or city income taxes. I mean this in both possible ways. First, is the casino they are playing at located within city limits? So any taxable jackpots paid include a city or local income tax component. Second, and most importantly, do you pay city or local income taxes based on where your home is? If so, the relative difference between the local income tax rate and the local city income tax rate for any casino where taxable jackpots have been won is of significant importance. Here's why. If a player doesn't have local or city taxes based on where their home is, then there is no cause for alarm other than the adult pain of understanding that any local city taxes paid at a casino due to having won one or more taxable jackpots within a tax year will not be refunded or otherwise returned. There is little reason for alarm because state and federal taxes allow gambling deductions if sufficiently good records are kept. So consultation with your accountant or income tax professional, along with good financial record keeping, can result in either an annual tax refund or no significant tax payment from both state and federal income tax returns. This is what some gamblers refer to as a wash, due to no significant annual tax payment to be made or tax refund to be had. If a player does have local or city taxes due to where they live, then they may find themselves effectively blocked from gambling at a relatively high level. That is to say, when winning many taxable jackpots, due to the excessive tax burden imposed. And if you're not aware of this potential difficulty, slots players could get in serious financial difficulty if they proceed to gamble and win heavily anyway. Why? Because it is more than likely that, if required to submit an annual tax revenue form to the local city government, that income tax office will not accept any income tax deductions, including the often relatively large gambling deductions routinely accepted with state and federal income tax returns. If this potential local tax issue is not clearly understood in advance, an example may help explain the possible excessive tax burden which may occur. Let's say local taxes are at a flat rate of 2%, and total income revenue from gambling for a tax year was $10,000. If all those winnings were spent gambling, that is to say, if profit was zero but gambling deductions was for the full $10,000, then the federal and state income tax returns will effectively result in zero taxable income from gambling. Again, profit was zero, so the tax burden is also zero. However, because local city taxes don't usually allow for gambling deductions, make sure you consult your local tax professional to confirm this, this slots player would be required to pay 2% of that $10,000 annual revenue. This would result in having $200 in local city income taxes when filing an annual tax return. Note that if your casino has local taxes, this tax burden can be reduced or eliminated up to the amount of local taxes paid at the time of receiving jackpots. If your casino has a higher rate for local taxes than you do, even if you have none, you won't get these taxes back as a refund. Such a $200 local income tax burden can be a surprise. I can respect that it might be difficult to pay. Now, imagine that revenue was much higher. Consider if $10,000 in taxable jackpots was won and every dollar of it spent every 6 weeks for a full year. Now, the local city tax burden has jumped to over $1,700. So for clarity and understanding the local tax situation for gamblers, let's consider a realistic total income revenue from gambling. A typical situation for a high roller slots player that has chosen to gamble away every dollar won and lives in a region with a flat local tax of 2% could easily have the following amounts of winnings and local taxes. Let's say the total taxable jackpot was $150,000 split evenly between 2 casinos. Let's say that the local rate was 2% at the first casino, so that the total local taxes paid was $15,000. Now let's say the second casino had a 0 tax rate for local taxes. Therefore, the local amount of taxes paid would have been 0. Now let's complicate it slightly more and say we have $10,000 in documented taxable goods and services, that is to say comps. The resultant local taxes due would be $15,000 owed to the first casino, but since $15,000 has been paid in local taxes with the jackpots, that would be 0. However, at the second casino, $15,000 would be owed, but nothing was paid at that casino. So that would be a $15,000 tax burden. Then, for the comps, that would be $200. So the total local city tax burden not paid at the time of winning jackpots would be $15,200 for the year. That can be a surprise. In summary, keeping gambling records for tax preparation as well as tracking gambling performance is essential. Knowing how much you've won at gambling is an IRS requirement, managed by the casino providing a W-2G tax form upon winning a jackpot of $1,200 or more. Further, knowing how much you've lost is to your advantage, leading to being able to use gambling deductions up to the amount of your documented winnings, potentially resulting in a significant tax refund. From personal experience, it feels just like you've won all over again. I've provided a list of the minimum information necessary for keeping gambling records for tax preparation, which can be relatively easily recorded. I've also suggested additional entries which could be convenient to have for simple financial analyses of your gambling expenses. Keep in mind that software is not actually necessary to keep good gambling records. A single notebook or stack of papers is all that's really needed. However, if you happen to already use data spreadsheet software, this may significantly shorten how much time is spent keeping and organizing these records. I sincerely believe your gambling performance at playing slots will financially improve when using some or all of my winning slots techniques. So keeping gambling records for tax preparation will, therefore, become necessary. I also acknowledge that I'm not a professional tax preparation expert. If applying any of these suggestions, please be sure to consult your local income tax professional. Remember to visit ProfessorSlots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. Show notes for this episode are now available within most podcast apps, but are also available on my website at ProfessorSlots.com/E28. Up next is the second segment of the show, Mississippi Slot Machine Casino Gambling. In this episode segment, I provide a brief overview of the current state of gambling in a U.S. state, U.S. territory, or U.S. federal district, emphasizing, by far, anything of interest to slot machine casino gamblers. Here goes. Mississippi slot machine casino gambling consists of 28 commercial casinos and an additional 3 American Indian tribal casinos. The commercial casinos are permanently moored riverboat casinos and are legally not allowed to cruise. As much as these casinos are actually barges, Mississippi commercial casinos have the appearance of being land-based casinos. In 1990, the Mississippi State Legislature was the third U.S. state to legalize riverboat gambling. The first casino to open was the Isle of Capri in Biloxi in August of 1992. Gambling in Mississippi has since added to the economy of the state and, interestingly enough, breathed new life into the tourism industry of the Magnolia State. The legal age for gambling is 21. No one under the age of 21 is allowed in a casino without adult supervision. No one under the age of 21 is allowed on the gambling floor. Mississippi's commercial casinos are required by Mississippi law to be located on coastal waters, the Mississippi River, and in navigable waters of counties bordering the Mississippi River. Due to the destruction caused by Hurricane Katrina in 2005, the Mississippi legislature allowed the state's Gulf Coast casinos to rebuild on land within 800 feet of the shoreline. With this approval, some commercial casinos on the Gulf Coast were subsequently rebuilt within this restriction. All casinos are open 24 hours. Winning a jackpot of $1,200 or more in Mississippi results in an additional 3% tax of those winnings due to the Mississippi Gaming Commission. This gambling tax is non-refundable. This limit also applies to any cash prizes won in casino drawings and tournaments. Next up is a usually short statement about slot machine private ownership, which I included in case you live in this U.S. state and are considering owning a slot machine. Here it is. It is legal to privately own a slot machine in the state of Mississippi if it is at least 25 years old. The official state gaming commission is the Mississippi Gaming Commission, which states its mission to be, quote, "The mission of the Mississippi Gaming Commission, MGC, is to enforce the Gaming Control Act and charitable gaming laws of the state of Mississippi. The MGC will establish and enforce regulations under the authority of these laws in such a manner that they will ensure the integrity of the state of Mississippi and maintain the public confidence in both the charitable gaming and casino gaming industries by working in conjunction with the industry. The Mississippi Gaming Commission will work in concert with international, national, state, county, local regulatory, and law enforcement agencies to establish a safe and crime-free environment. In addition, the MGC will ensure economic development that is in both the best interest and safety of the citizens of the state of Mississippi." End quote. The Mississippi Gaming Commission provides monthly slot machine payout percentage returns on their website. However, these payout statistics have combined together the results of all electronic gaming machines, including slot machines, video poker, and video keno. In addition, it also separates its commercial casinos by their physical region within the state. These 3 regions are the Central Region, including the cities of Vicksburg and Natchez, the Northern Region, including the cities of Tunica, Greenville, and Lula, and the Coastal Region, including the cities of Biloxi, Gulfport, and Bay St. Louis. Otherwise, the Mississippi Gaming Commission provides highly thorough payout statistics. Their online and available monthly reports separate out payout statistics by the regions mentioned, specific commercial casino by name, and by machine denomination. In addition, the payout return percentages for progressive-style slot machines are also separated out. Relative to other states I've researched for this weekly blog series, the payout statistics provided by Mississippi is the most thorough treatment I've yet seen for payout returns. What follows is a highly limited set of payout statistics from Mississippi. These are simply the electronic gaming machine payout percentages statistics by both machine denomination and region from mid-2016 through mid-2017. I'll be providing just a few of these. For the Central Region, the highest payout return was 95.22% for $5 denomination slot machines. For the Coastal Region, the highest payout return was 94.89% for nickel denomination slot machines. And for the North region, the highest payout return was 97.93 for the $5 denomination slot machines. For the complete table of these payout returns for penny, nickel, quarter, $1, $5, and all slot machines for each of the three regions, see the link in my article on Mississippi slot machine casino gambling, available at professorslots.com/Mississippi. In this next section, I'll discuss Mississippi gambling establishments. As usual, the website links for each casino, assuming they have set up a website, is available by clicking on this segment in the show notes, available at professorslots.com/E28. There are 28 commercial casinos and an additional 3 American Indian tribal casinos in Mississippi. Useful maps of Mississippi casinos can be found on the website of the Mississippi Gaming Commission. Mississippi's largest casino is the Silver Star Casino, which is located in Philadelphia off of MS 16, nearly 100 miles northeast of the state capital of Jackson. It has 2,500 gaming machines and 75 table games. The Silver Star Casino is one of 3 tribal casino resorts managed by Pearl River Casinos and Resorts. Mississippi's second largest casino is the Island View Casino Resort, a commercial casino located about halfway between Biloxi and Bay St. Louis on Mississippi's Gulf Coast. It has 1,939 gaming machines and 45 table games. Rather than simply reading them aloud, Mississippi's 31 commercial and tribal casinos are fully listed at professorslots.com/Mississippi, or by taking a look at them in the transcript of these show notes at professorslots.com/E28. In summary, Mississippi slot machine casino gambling consists of 28 commercial riverboat casinos and 3 American Indian tribal casinos. The commercial casinos are moored and have the appearance of being land-based casinos. In 1990, Mississippi, known as the Magnolia State, was the 3rd U.S. state to legalize riverboat gambling. Gambling in Mississippi has since added to the economy of the state and breathed new life into its tourism industry. The legal age for gambling in Mississippi is 21. All casinos are open 24 hours. The Mississippi Gaming Commission provides extensive payout return statistics for its commercial casinos, where these percentages are parsed by state region, which would be northern, central, and coastal, commercial casino property, machine denomination, and non-progressive versus progressive jackpot machines. Winning a jackpot of $1,200 or more in Mississippi results in an additional 3% tax of those winnings paid to the Mississippi Gaming Commission. This gambling tax is non-refundable. This limit also applies to any cash prizes won in casino drawings and tournaments. Remember to visit professorslots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. Part 1 of the next episode of the Professor Slots podcast is winning strategy number 3. Part 2 of the next episode of the Professor Slots podcast is another brief overview of the current state of gambling in a U.S. state, territory, or federal district. This time, I'll be talking to you about the great U.S. state of Missouri. That's the end of another great episode of the Professor Slots podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Show notes for this episode can be found within most podcast apps or at professorslots.com/E28. I plan to have the next episode come out very soon for you, where I'll have more amazing content for the show. Until the next episode, have fun, be safe, and make good choices. Bye.